Hey, Thomas here with a lesson on sound at Artisan Theater Sound. So in this lesson, I want to show you the way that I prepare the microphone layout and the grouping of the characters that have mics on them. And we're going to use this Fiddler on the Roof Junior as an example, because that's a show that we're just in the process of preparing. And so we're going to be able to just, study this here and actually use it. And I'll walk you through the entire preparation of the board layout. We're using Behringer X32 consoles. We have 16 wireless mics, and the Behringer console is equipped with group faders. They're calling them DCA groups. There are 8 of those, and that's part of the consideration initially. So you have to figure out where to how to distribute the microphones that you're going to use, that you have, and the cast members, how to put them into the console, how to what layout of channels and tracks you're going to use for the microphones, and then secondarily how to group them so that your mixing is going to be easier, and you can have an easier time avoiding feedback and balancing the sound between different people who are singing together in the different songs. So usually what I do is I start with the musical numbers that have singing, and then I add to that later the dialogue scenes in between. All right, so the musical numbers that have singing, I usually just put them into an Excel spreadsheet here, or Google Doc spreadsheet, and kind of just work it out. You can do this on paper, you can do it in your head, but this is the way I usually do it. So I usually run the musical numbers that have singing down the left side, and then I'm going to run the characters up across the top, across the columns. And the first thing I do is I put X's into the crosshair of whichever song has this character involved. And so what I found here, just going through the score, and it's pretty simple. You just need the basic vocal score. You don't even need to have the access to the full accompaniment score or anything like that. You just have to have a way of figuring out who's singing in which of the songs. And so then here, turns out we actually have only 7 characters that have solos in any of the songs, and then plus ensemble. Now, later on, we're going to break the ensemble down, but for now, let's just focus on this very simple layout, because it turns out, like I said, there's only 7 characters that have solos to sing, and then there's the ensemble. This guy here, Modal, he kind of got into my lineup, but turns out he's actually not singing any solos in any of the or featured solos in any of these songs. So he's just going to be part of the ensemble, but he's an important character, so he's going to have dialogue scenes. So he's going to be important to have in the first 8. So here's one little secret, is that the first 8 tracks on the Behringer X32 console have a special feature that only can be used with those 8 tracks, and that's called auto mix. So because of that, it's pretty important to put the most important characters that have a lot of dialogue scenes together into the first 8 tracks. Okay, so that's how I do it. And then I usually put just, the main people up front. But then the next consideration is kind of like a logical organization of how the characters go together, because that helps me later when you mix and when you have to make a quick adjustment, not to have to parse, well, which number channel was that character again. You kind of know immediately, okay, these 2 belong together, so these 2 are up here. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Tevye is the main guy. You can see he has the most solos in all of his singing numbers. And then Goldie is his wife. These 3 guys here are their daughters, and Lazar is the love interest of Seidl. Okay, so that means that's the reason why I'm organizing these three daughters this way. Seidl is arguably a more important character than Hodel, but you can see Hodel has actually more singing solos than Seidl, and secondarily, Seidl is a good to combine with Lazar on the other end here. And Perchik is another guy. So then, just to make this easy here, I usually kind of color code them for me. For sure, I'm going to color code them in the on the board, but for now, let's just color code them here as well, so we have an easier time identifying who's who. And it's very, I don't care political correctness here, but we're just going to color the ladies pinkish or red, and the guys bluish or blue. Okay, so here are the guys, and that's sufficient for now. Let's make Tevye a little darker, or just stand out as this a little more shiny. Okay, so there you go. That's awesome. And then ensemble is obviously mixed. And okay, so now that we have this layout, and you can kind of argue for slightly different organizations, but you can see here what I did, right? I have 1 and 2 is Tevye and Goldie, or Golde, and you can see they have a lot of combinations here, so that's good to have them together and just kind of go, okay, the first 2 tracks, that's them. And then secondly, the next 3 tracks are the daughters, and again, 5 and 6 is Seidl and Lazar, because they kind of belong together as well, and then it goes on with some more guys, and then the ensemble is going to be broken down. All right, now, with the X's here in place, you can see where you have combinations of different people that are in the same number. Now, my first goal that when I look at this is to figure out if I can make a grouping for the DCA groups that separates every person who has ever to sing a solo in a different number. And you'll see in a minute why that is important and why that is a good thing to do. So I'll explain as I go. Now let's go over to the DCA groups, and let me explain how we use them in general and what their main function is. So the first DCA group, we typically use this for the music track. So I'm going to color this golden, and I'm just going to put music in here. Music, general industry standard abbreviation is MX. MX stands for music. All right. So this is the music. This is in the DCA group. That's the way to control the music. Then the last group, I usually kind of like to leave that open for special things like maybe sound effects, like a reverb or something like that. Something that is good to add and to control, in addition to actual vocal and musical aspects. Okay, so I'd like to kind of reserve that. So that leaves me then with 6 groups that I can use to distribute these main characters and the ensemble. Now, with that in mind, usually what I like to do is have a way to split the ensemble into 2 groups. So whoever is, you can see here, so what we have is 8 mics or 7 mics are used for the characters who have singing to do, in solo singing in any of the musical numbers. And 8, starting with 8, we have people who have dialogue to do, important solo characters for dialogue. Now that leaves us another 8 mics open, right? 9 through 16 is still available to put on other individuals who are going to have dialogue solo lines, and they also probably have singing lines in the ensemble. So that's going to be overlapping between people who have dialogue lines and ensemble. For now, just for conversation's sake, let's just pretend like all the other 8 people just have, for the purpose of organizing the singing, are singing in the ensemble. So usually what I like to do is I split them up, and you can split them up in girls and boys or female and male voices or different parts depending on the structure of the singing and how complex everything is. But usually I like to be able to control parts of the ensemble that sound differently separately in two different groups. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to call 6 ensemble 1 and 7 ensemble 2. And I was going to do that just for now. Okay, we're going to break that out later for the precise explanation of what we're going to do. And this here, I'm just going to call that SFX. That's just like MX stands for music, SFX stands for sound effects. So we're just going to, for now, just reserve this group for later, and I'll show you later what we're going to do with it, right? So now we have music on 1, effects on 8, ensemble 1 and 2 on 6 and 7. That leaves us 4 groups left over to distribute the people that we have in here. And so, again, the objective on how we group them together is that ideally, nobody should be in the same group that is singing together in the same number. Okay, so simply speaking, we're just going to start out here with Tevye on 1. Tevye in the next group here in group number 2, and Golde in group number 3. And then we're going to just look down who else needs to be split up between them that cannot overlap either Tevye or Golde for one of the musical numbers. And so that would be here, Hodel. So Hodel needs to be in the next group. And also in the same number here is Perchik. So Perchik is going to go into the next group. Now, let's see. So this covers everything. Everything is good now that involves Tevye and Golde. And we still have Chava and Seidel to put into groups. Now, we want to make sure that Chava and Seidel are not together with Hodel because they have a trio here in Matchmaker where we want to be able to control them separately in the groups from Hodel. So we're going to put Chava in with Golde, and Seidel in with Perchik. Okay? And that is, let's see if that's a good idea. Yeah, so neither of them have any other singing to do. So they're not going to interfere with them otherwise, but they will have dialogue scenes where they split up, where they're together combined with Tevye and Seidel, for example, Tevye and Golde. So it's also good for that, for the purpose of those scenes, to have them laid out like this and split up. So now the last one that's left over here is Lazar Wolf. Lazar is obviously going to want to be not in the same group with Seidel because they're going to have at least scenes with each other where they're talking. So we're just going to put Lazar into Hodel's group. Now, and that's good too, because then here to life, this number here, Tevye and Lazar are separate and they're now in separate groups. So that's good. And Perchik is already here. Okay, so that's four deep. That was our initial consideration there to do it this way. And there you go. There's Golde solo. So I'm kind of beginning to think that I may have not completely finished this layout here with the axis, but we can add to that later as we go. All right. So there you go. So with that, with this layout for the groups here, the benefit of what you have here now is that you don't ever need to touch any of the individual faders in order to adjust balances between the characters who are singing together in the same song. It's completely sufficient to use the group faders to balance that out. Okay, and that's the main goal. That's the purpose of designing A, the mic layout, and B, the group layout, so that you can have control over parts that are grouped together in the same song. Ideally, you'll be able to find a group configuration, just like we did just now, that is going to work for all songs in the piece, in the entire show. You could theoretically program changes to the groups, and we often end up doing that if the shows are more complicated, where it just doesn't work out to have 4 groups and separate them, the characters that are singing in all sung numbers throughout the entire show. But luckily, this here is a pretty simple show, so it's going to work out just fine, and we're still going to have very powerful control here over the different parts in the ensemble. And we'll go over that in a separate video once we have more information about who exactly is in the ensemble. So we're going to have an actual cast list where we see, you know, how many females, how many males are there, what parts are they singing, in what numbers precisely are they singing, you know, are there all females and all males singing in all numbers, and things like that. So we're going to break the ensemble out eventually, but we're going to do that in a separate video. So for now, just, you know, thanks for watching, and this is an awesome start to get a little bit more understanding of how to manage your mix well, and how to lay out the layout of the mixer so that everything works out really well in the show for you. Thanks for watching. This is Thomas Bartke signing off.